So growing up in Florida, cramping is always an issue when playing sports. And in high school, well, I usually did the basics with Gatorade type of drinks, and usually that helped the cramping quite a bit. But as I grew older, I realized that my physical fitness level was decreasing and my amount of cramping was increasing. And so I was looking for various products to help decrease my cramps. And the funniest thing was, I was playing soccer, and after the practice, again, I was cramping despite drinking Gatorade. And I was eating lunch and had some Lay's potato chip, and the cramps actually went away quite quickly. So I was curious to see why that was the case. And as I was looking through the ingredients of the of the Lay's, I noticed that the potassium level is 350 milligrams per serving, which is significantly higher than a typical Gatorade. So I went online and started looking for various sports drinks that had a high level of potassium, and I found one called Pedialyte Rush. And you can see the ingredients on the iPad. The Pedialyte Rush had 710 milligrams of potassium per small serving packet, and you would just throw this into 16-ounce fluid, and it worked super well for me. Unfortunately, Pedialyte no longer makes this particular packet, so I was looking for other packets that never really sort of hit the mark for me, and I was still cramping with some of the other sports drinks that I tried. One of the ones that I did find that was relatively good was the Liquid IV. And as you can see, the Liquid IV also has potassium of 380 milligrams and high levels of sodium as well. And these are actually, I really enjoyed these as well, the Liquid IVs. They have quite a few different types of flavoring, and I thought that was all very good. But before I found the Liquid IV, I decided to try to make my own sports drink. And as we all know, these packets are actually relatively expensive, from $1.50 to $2 or more per packet. So I looked at the Pedialyte Rush, the ingredients, and I tried to sort of emulate that. And the Pedialyte predominantly has a lot of, if you look at the main ingredients, potassium bicarbonate, sodium bicarbonate, and salt. So I went online and just bought some of these ingredients myself. Obviously, you need to buy food grade, ingredients, and this is something I found on Amazon. Potassium bicarbonate, and it has 1.3 grams per serving, and that will give you about 494 grams. And what I did was, a serving size was about a quarter of a teaspoon, and I used an eighth of a teaspoon, so that gave me about 247 milligrams of potassium per shot. And then I would add Morton's Light Salt, which is 50% potassium chloride and 50% sodium chloride. And I also use a quarter teaspoon of this, eighth teaspoon of this. And I'll also use baking soda, which will give us about 150 milligrams of sodium per serving. Of course, with these ingredients, they really taste pretty bad if you actually just had it by itself. So first one I bought was Crystal Light, and this is actually like 10 cents per little packet, and really pretty good tasting. And one thing I also note is that this also has a little bit of potassium which I really like. So it has 160 milligrams of potassium in each serving. And also sort of like these flavors, which I've also found on Amazon, and sort of to change up the flavoring every once in a while, and don't think they have too much in terms of nutritional value, and it does have some sugar in the system, which I personally don't mind. I mean, the way I see it is that we're working out, and our body needs the sugar anyways, so why not? So what I would do is start with the minimum amount, about an eighth of a teaspoon of these various ingredients, and if you feel like that you're getting, more cramps despite the drinks, you can always bump it up to to add a little bit more of regular sodium. If you want to increase your sodium or increase your potassium, you can add more potassium chloride into your formulation and see what works for you. So, using these ingredients with an eighth of a teaspoon each, I estimate that I get approximately 422 milligrams of potassium and 325 milligrams of sodium. Although it doesn't quite reach the levels of the Pedialyte Rush that I was using before. Again, I found this combination has worked well for me. The kitchen also had a very good YouTube video about hydration with a specialist that I'll also link in my comments below. One of the things that he noted was that we lose about a half a teaspoon per hour of intense activity, and this formulation I have is usually basically an eighth of a teaspoon of the material, and I usually put about 3 to 4 servings into a large 64-ounce drink, so that more or less will give you about half a teaspoon worth of electrolytes in an hour, if you drink all of it in an hour. I'm not sure if we need to totally replenish all the electrolytes, at each setting, but it seems to work for me if with that 64-ounce drink, and I'll play, pickleball for 2 to 3 hours and without any cramping issues. Now, one of the other issues that he brought up which was interesting, is to prevent cramping, you may want to sort of practice with slightly lower levels of electrolyte rehydration, so potentially you can increase your overall fluid volume, and that's an interesting idea which I think I will try in the future and see how that goes. And lastly, the one thing nice about doing this alone is that it's obviously so much cheaper. I'll link the products prices in my comments, and you'll see how these things have lasted me for years in terms of salt and potassium bicarbonate. So as we discuss the formulation of these sports drinks, one other thing that can help with your cramping issues is also unfortunately, to get in better shape. So if you notice that you're playing pickleball and you have cramping in your feet, things to work on is, number one, check the circulation of the area. So if shoelaces may be too tight, that can also cause cramping. But then you may also want to start working out the muscles in your feet. For example, that was one of my problems, that I would cramp up in my toes, and that really hurts. And so I started actually doing some exercises on my toes, just the basic sort of curls and relaxation, hyperextension of my feet and my toes. And I found that to be really useful to help out. So if you cramp up your hands, do some hand flexion extension exercises, and that should decrease your cramping. And lastly, when you actually do have an actual cramp, sometimes it's sort of, you just don't want to move at all, but moving and trying to get the muscles, circulation back into muscle is actually pretty important to help decrease the cramping. So improve your electrolyte intake, improve your overall fitness, and prepare your muscles and your body for the exercise that you are going to be doing will help significantly decrease the amount of cramping you have. Hopefully that's helpful for everybody, and thanks again for listening.